Hello and welcome to www.collectinglouisvuitton.com and also www.luxurytolast.com. Okay, today we're talking watch collecting. Okay, so let's have a think about this here. You've got an interest in watches and you want to start a collection. What advice can I give? This is based on my 20 years in the watch industry, 20 years as a collector and trader, and a lifetime of loving quality watches. Okay, a first few things about collecting watches is I'd try and buy items second hand. You don't want to be buying items new, because if you're buying new, it's very hard to trade out of them without losing your ass on it. If you buy second hand, someone else has already taken the initial retail hit, and you can very easily, if you're a bit smart and a bit savvy, get rid of the piece for more than you paid. Obviously, if you're not that smart, you could possibly just lose a little bit, but at the end of the day, you're going to reduce the amount of loss you had when you change pieces. The second bit of advice is stay away from dogs. Now, when I say dogs, I'm talking about watches that are just not fucking wanted by anyone. Now, there's a whole host of brands that absolutely suck, and these brands there are the sort of the lower tier brands. Now, my best advice is have a look at my other video on the 10 greatest watches of all time. Those are the most desired brands and the most desired models. And what you've got to do is you look at that and say, okay, what's a dog? Now, often dogs are cheap. The reason a dog is cheap is because no one wants the dog. So that's some advice there. Give you an idea, Baume & Mercier. Baume & Mercier tends to have some really nice trendy fashion pieces, but they go soft very quickly. It's a very soft brand. Ebel is an absolute dog of a brand. They got some nice pieces, but they go soft very quickly. They go soft like putting an ice cream in the summer sun. Other brands to avoid are fashion type brands. Personally, I'd never buy a Louis Vuitton watch. I love Louis Vuitton suitcases and hard case luggage, but I don't see their relation to watches. The brand Louis Vuitton has added watches as just as a financial means. Louis Vuitton doesn't have a strong history of watchmaking, and in that regards there, I think that's a brand to stay away from. Cartier, see, there's some controversy whether they invented the wristwatch, but they've been in the watch game for years, so that's a great brand. But you've got to, with Cartier itself there, you've got to be careful because the brand constantly brings new models out, and the older models, unless they're classic, they suffer badly from price. Now, some other advice is stay away from quartz. Okay, stay away from quartz. Now, with all of my rules there's exceptions. I mean, I've owned quartz Patek Philippe watches. I mean, Patek Philippe is a great brand. Quartz for ladies is fine, but quartz for men's is absolutely death. Okay. The big danger with quartz is that if something goes wrong, it's very expensive to fix because only the maker can repair it. And that's what one of my next pieces of advice is: find a good watchmaker, because if you take your watch back to the official agent all the time, it will absolutely bankrupt you. You need to get a skilled professional, an older watchmaker who knows what they're doing, to do repairs and adjustments for you. And with a quartz piece, there's not much they can do. If the circuit's fucked, the watch is fucked. You've got to go back and get a new circuit, and often the manufacturers will screw the shit out of you for that. So you've got to, my advice is stay away from quartz unless there's a good reason for buying it there. The next bit of advice is stay away from anything that's gold plated. Gold plated is absolute fucking trouble. Okay, gold plating is it's just not in. Okay, it's never been in. It's always cheap and nasty. Gold plating sucks. I don't know why anyone would buy a watch that's gold plated. Now, some of the big makers, Rolex had gold plated, Omega has a lot of gold plated models. Stay away from it. You're much better off to have a steel piece than a gold plated piece. I mean, gold plating itself is trouble. If you put if you scratch it or it gets bumped, it looks shit, and it's very hard to replate it after it's had a knock or a scratch. It's just fucked. Gold plating, unless you really have a certain reason for buying it, stay away from it. Cartier, on their lower end models, that's the musty Cartier range, they have vermeil, which is gold plated silver. Look, that's passable, but I'd prefer to buy the more expensive ones. I mean, gold plating sucks, and whether it's steel or chrome underneath there, or whether it's brass underneath, it all sucks. So I'd tend to stay away from anything that's gold plated. You want to stay. Steel is so much better than any gold plated type piece there. The other advice is, when you're buying pieces, you've got to really know your stuff. Learn as much as you can. Now, there is no easy fix to this stuff. I've been in watches for 20 years. I'm still learning stuff. You learn things by reading. You learn things from talking to people. Now we've got the internet. You go onto forums and you learn about stuff. You've just got to get that knowledge. And this is what makes collecting so fun, is that you can't just buy the knowledge. It's not just an instant thing. You're an expert in this. It's years and years of researching and having pieces, sampling pieces. This is really half the fun to collecting. It's not the destination, it's the journey, and I can't stress that enough there. As far as some more advice goes, I would say the other thing about watch collecting is, a great way to go is to decide what do you want to collect. And a great example of that is, you could say, well, I want to collect Rolex, or I want to collect sports, I want to collect chronographs. So chronographs, some classic chronographs. If you're collecting chronographs, I would go Omega Speedmaster Man on the Moon. That's the manual wind one. Breitling Navitimer. You'd go Rolex Daytona. You'd go for a Zenith chronograph. That's some classic names in chronographs. Another type of collection you might want to have is diving watches. Okay, so if you're really into diving watches, what would your classic diving watches be? Well, you'd be Rolex Submariner, Rolex Sea Dweller, Omega Seamaster, Omega Vintage Seamaster, like the 300 meter models. There's heaps of good diving watches out there. Another type of watch you might want to collect is classic iconic dress watches. You could go Patek Philippe Calatrava. You could go Jaeger LeCoultre Reverso. You could go Cartier Tank Watch. There's so many beautiful, good quality pieces there. And the beautiful thing is, if you buy good quality, beautiful things, you'll always have a buyer for them. You buy pieces of shit, they're always hard to sell. And I'll give you an example, okay? Cartier Tank, 18 karat Louis Cartier Tank Watch. Okay, they're a bit small by modern standards, but you buy a nice one of those, you'll always flick it. I've flicked them many times, and if you buy a piece of shit, you'll never be able to flick it. So you've really got to buy nice, beautiful things. I find it nice myself, if possible, to get the box and papers and put it all together. Sometimes you can often buy pieces a lot cheaper without the paperwork in the box. That's good. And you can track it down later. It's not an instant thing. It's not easy. If it was easy, people would do it all the time. But that's the fun in collecting. Another type of collection, you might say, you could say, well, I want to collect white metal pieces. So you could have white gold, platinum, steel. Another great collection I've seen is two-tone pieces. Rolex has got some great bargains there. Rolex is probably one of the leading brands. If someone said to me, what two brands would I recommend someone to stay with so they don't get burnt in watches? Rolex and Patek Philippe. That's the two strong brands. Look, Rolex has got some great bargains there. At the moment, the Explorer series is very undervalued. I think that's a classic, iconic sports pieces. Datejust, the 36mm Datejust, are great buying. Look, if you want something on a lower end scale, cheaper, entry level Rolex, well, I don't think you can get past a Rolex Oyster Date 6694. They were made from the 60s up until the late 80s, and they're a they're a manual wind watch, which means it's not automatic, and they've got a date function. They're a little bit small by modern standards because the bracelet they take is 19 mil, but look, bang per buck, you pick one of those up for about $1,000. I mean, how could you go wrong with that? It makes a great piece for ladies later on. It's a proper Rolex. So there you go. It's $1,000 for a Rolex Oyster Date, and I know heaps of dealers who would sell it for that sort of money. And why would you buy a shit gold-plated thing for $1,000 when you can have a good used Rolex? Cartier's got some great brands, great models in it, I should say. Be a bit careful with Cartier because as soon as the model is no longer flavour of the month, the prices drop like a stone. Cartier's got some pieces which really have aged quite badly there, but there's some good buying there. Anything sports is often very good. Any of the Omegas in sports are good. With your Omega, I'd try and stay away from anything quartz. Stay away from quartz. Omega's got some great buying there. I would greatly recommend any of the Seamasters, the Speedies. They're fantastic. The Constellation, as far as a dress watch go, they're great. They've got some really nice models there. Stay away from the quartz versions. And stay away from the gold-plated versions. That's my advice on Omega. Omega's good buying. Some other great pieces there. Patek Philippe. Well, look, Patek Philippe's always a strong, good brand. Now, I live in a place called Brisbane, and we don't even have an agent for Patek Philippe. The nearest agent is the Gold Coast. So, I mean, if you're a novice collector, Patek Philippe is very short on the ground. They have a production run of 40 to 50,000 watches a year. So the amount of stock on the second-hand market, I've talked to dealers all the time, and even in Hong Kong and places like that, desirable models are thin on the ground. They're still there. They are there if you look, but they're thin on the ground. So as far as Patek Philippe goes, you can't go to some hick town or hick city and expect to find Patek Philippe everywhere, because it just doesn't exist like that. Patek's a great brand. I've owned many Pateks, and I've got a strong inclination for Patek. I think the 3919, that's the slightly smaller Calatrava, that's a great buying. They're good pieces. I've got a 5107, which was a very expensive piece, but it was expensive because it's a Grand Tourly. It's just a beautiful looking piece. I'm sorry to say this, but you get what you pay for. The highly desirable name, highly desirable model, highly desirable size, well, you're going to have to pay for that. There's no free lunches in this world, I'm afraid. Patek Philippe, I would tend to say, look, pick a model that you love. Don't just pick one because it's cheap. You've got to pick a model. There's some mid-size pieces. You can get some of those a bit cheaper, but look, mid-size is cheaper because no one bloody wants it. That's the problem. Mid-size has really become large ladies now, so for men it's not so desirable. So look, Patek Philippe, they got some great models there, but they're thin on the ground. They're hard to find. Vacher and Constantin and Audemars Piguet, they're two really high-end brands. The thing is, they're never going to be as good as Patek Philippe as far as ease of resaleability and desirability. They're two leading makers there, but they're often a lot harder to sell, and that's why you're paying such a premium with Patek, because it's wanted, and it's just it's the brand. It's the brand. Like Ferrari is the brand. Like Rolls-Royce is the brand. That's just how it goes. Advice as far as watches go, I'd buy what makes you happy there. Buy what makes you happy. Mechanical, stay away from quartz, stay away from gold plated. Buy iconic pieces, and buy pieces that are often it's better to have in-house movements. Like a lot of companies use a Valjoux or an ETA movement. Tudor does that, for example, and Amiga does that. They're okay, but try and get some good classic pieces in your collection. Best bit of advice I can give you is that if you've got a choice of 15 mediocre pieces or 3 outstanding pieces, go for 3 outstanding pieces instead of 15 mediocre pieces. And that's always the best way to go, is quality over quantity. And that's a bit hard because people like to add pieces to the collection, but if you've got shit pieces, well, shit pieces are shit pieces. You're better off to have less shit pieces and better desirable pieces. And at the end of the day, that'll make you much more happy. I hope you've enjoyed this free information video here. Please come to my free website, www.luxurytolast. I've got heaps of articles, and I love watches, and I enjoy sharing this knowledge with all people. So please come to my website, and don't forget, flick me an email, tell me about your collection and that there, and I'd love to hear about it. Thanks very much.